2023 has come to a close, and of course, like every year, I'm like the last person to put out a game of the year video, things like that. I take a long time. I try and play as many games as I can right up until the end of 2023 and consider as much as possible. Ultimately, though, this year, my list is pretty it's predictable, but with a couple of big omissions. I play a lot of games every year. I do the game ranks before you buys and stuff like that, and I jump into some games just to check them out. So like I touch most major releases, but quite a few significant high profile releases this year didn't make my list. That's not to say that like I don't think those games are bad or anything, but I think it's just a year that was so jam-packed with a bunch of generally good games that some other games that are really good just get squeezed off the main list just because there were so many. So for what I try and do is games that I really like, of course, but games that I remember. Games that stick in my head for a long time after playing them. So this list, the order doesn't really matter except for like the number one game, the last game, the biggest game. I try and make like my one pick, but ultimately the rest of these games, it's just one big long list of stuff I like. Again, this is stuff that I like. It's my personal choices. You're going to disagree. That's how this works. I always have to say that disclaimer because still adult people who watch videos don't understand how this works. Like this isn't a declarative thing. It's the games that I got the most enjoyment out of, the most fun out of. I thought about something. So these are my picks. These are the things I enjoyed the most in 2023, all right? The first thing is the Resident Evil 4 remake. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off, get a basic one out of the way. I love Resident Evil. I've talked about it for years. I've been playing since the original Resident Evil game released on PlayStation 1. So I'm kind of a sucker for a Resident Evil game, and Resident Evil 4 remake, I was actually pretty skeptical. I was a little nervous because that was the weird one. You know, that was, oh, excuse me. That was the weird one where, you know, it could have gone awry. The remake could have really missed the mark. It could have not recaptured that lightning in a bottle. But thankfully, I think it did. I think it made characters more interesting. I think it retained the weirdness. It made things a little scarier. I still think the original Resident Evil 4 has its own identity and has its own merits that should still be considered, definitely. But I think for newer audiences, this is a very cool way to get a similar thing. I love them both. They are both my children. But Resident Evil 4 Remake was fun. They did a great job with it. And like any good Resident Evil game, it was a good it had good reasons to replay over and over again. I really like the added depth to like Ashley, Leon, Luis. Like I just didn't expect a lot of that stuff, and they really did a good job. It's significant because I feel like the Resident Evil 2 remake is also kind of like this, which I loved. I feel like it's like I'm gonna go back and probably replay this every other year or something like that, just because it's a good adventure to blast through, and it makes me happy. That's kind of the theme on this list. If we're talking about games that made me happy, another one of my picks is HiFi Rush. HiFi Rush released earlier in the year, dropped on like Xbox and PC, and it was a surprise release. I played through it, absolutely loved it. I love cartoons. I love fun, wacky, zany stuff. Music is great. And this game combined all of that. It was an action hack and slash adventure, kind of with a little bit of a rhythm game thing to it. So almost think like a Devil May Cry style game, but you're incentivized to like slash or shoot or hit on the beat. The gameplay worked perfectly for that. I really, really liked it. But I just loved the art style and the animation and how everything came together. I think it really did a good job embracing some Western animation stuff, a lot of Japanese animation stuff, and making this own unique special hybrid of just a cool thing. A really good vibe. The music is incredible. The licensed tracks that they use are great. The boss battles, I think, are really the highlight of this game. They just feel so well crafted, so entertaining, and so replayable. Not just because like they're challenging, but because of the way the music works and how the push and pull of the combat and the encounter really works. It just felt so special. I've played rhythm games. I've played hack and slash games. I've played games that take rhythm elements and apply them in unique ways. There's a bunch out there, but none like HiFi Rush. It managed to feel like such a throwback and just such a unique new thing at the same time. And I think that's so impressive. Now, okay, over at the next one, if we're talking about impressive, Baldurs Gate 3. I think for me on the list, why I have it here is because it is so impressive. I think it is an incredible feat of game making. And so like, it's not my number one game of the year because it just didn't hit me as hard as it hit some other people. But like, I am just so in love with what they made in terms of just seeing it all play out. your decisions, the world itself, things adapting, things changing, the romanceable NPCs, how it all ebbs and flows and how it changes and how it reacts to you, and just is a true through and through RPG. It's just really incredible to see play out. Like I said in my video on this channel, it kind of made me kind of start to understand Dungeons and Dragons a little and kind of tiptoe into it. Between that and the Dungeons and Dragons movie, I guess now I kind of see why people really love this stuff, and I want to get into it a little more. But the game itself, like, it has a good RPG thing where it has memorable party members. That's the biggest thing. I loved playing this game and then seeing it come out and more people play it and like react to all the characters and some of the big moments because they're memorable. Like any other good game, like it reminds me, like obviously it makes sense, but like it reminds me of like a BioWare thing, like some of the memorable characters from the Normandy. Like Baldur's Gate 3 really is just an incredibly, shockingly impressive RPG. I don't know how Larian could really ever top anything like this. I know that the combat system isn't for everybody, but I really like the challenge that it had. I don't know, I'm kind of stumbling through this one, but moral of the story is I think it is a excellent game. Next up is a little game called Dredge. This is the boat game. I've talked about this in various places, the Friends Per Second podcast here. Dredge is a really great combination of gameplay elements where it's kind of like an addictive fishing, dredging mini game, but with the caveat that like all the stuff you dredge up or the treasures you find or the fish you catch, you have to fit on your boat in a Resident Evil 4 attache case style inventory system, which makes it incredibly addictive, but also it's based on kind of runs where you go out on your little boat and time passes the further you go out to sea. So you need to make sure you hurry back so you don't get like destroyed by rocks hidden in the fog. You don't want to crash, but also there are like creepy, like sea monster type things going on. So the game has this really good air of mystery to it as well. And you travel and you kind of venture and you get your way through these islands. It's got a very coastal, like Northeast New England style vibe to it that I really enjoy. That's kind of like my thing. But just playing it and like how there is a little story and how you kind of work through it and piece through it and slowly upgrade your boat and stuff. For me, playing it on Steam Deck for most of the game, I was kind of like reading a little bit of a book before you go to bed. But in this term, it's like a cozy, spooky, Lovecraftian horror fishing game. It's not really like that scary or anything, but it's just like moody. It's got like some good intrigue to it, and it just really worked. Not to mention the fact that the core gameplay loop itself is just so addictive that I was thinking about it when I wasn't playing it, which is always the mark of an engaging game for sure. But with Dredge, it wasn't just the addictive elements. It was all that other stuff around it, that like warm, cozy game blanket hug that it gave me. And I say that even though it's like about like the horrors of the unknown depths of the sea. But yeah, you get what I mean. Next up is Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. This one's an obvious. If you know me, I'm a mark for Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. I also really loved Insomniac's first Spider-Man game from 2018. I think in 2018, I gave that like my game of the year. That was my pick. Spider-Man 2, my hot take is that it is not as good as Spider-Man 2018. That's my personal opinion. It just didn't hit me the same way that original game did. Having said that, I still think this is a great adventure. Because I just love Spider-Man, because I am a sucker for that stuff, I can't help but just fall in love and enjoy while I'm playing. From Venom and the craziness that ensued with that, the interesting and different spins they took on the characters, which is something as a comic book fan I love. I love when a new artist or a new thing or a new run takes on a character and flips it on its head or tries a different interpretation of it. I think that's what comics oftentimes can be built for. I love it with Batman. I love seeing different Batmans. I love seeing different Spider-Men. And what they did here with some of the characters I thought was pretty cool. I really liked seeing how it unfolded. And for me, as like a 90s Spider-Man comic book fan, this hit a lot of the right notes. And not because it just gave me exactly what I wanted from those comics. It didn't. And that's what I think upset some people with it. But for me, it was how it took those elements and really evoked the feel of those old comics, but told a new story and tried different things. Like it tried to make the Mary Jane missions better, but I still didn't like them. But a lot of crazy shit goes down in this game. There's a lot of emotion. The opening battle in this game is still probably one of the most incredible video game openers, or really superhero movie openers, in a long time. Next up is one I did not think I would have on my list at all, is Lies of P. Lies of P was on my most anticipated list because I love the story and the setting, just the thing they were going for here, the environment design, that kind of like Victorian Gothic Bloodborne thing, but it's like dark, gritty Pinocchio. That's a match made in heaven. That's really cool, but it's also a Souls-like. And I notoriously kind of drag myself into Souls-like games because I need to review them, and then like I'm not naturally good at them, and they burn me out. And I am so burned out on From Software style games. But Lies of P was just so good. And I stuck through it because I love the boss designs. I love the look of everything. I love the aesthetic. I love the music. Even though there's only a little bit of music, like I love the feel that music had. I loved Hotel Krat as a location. It was incredible. The city itself, Krat and the surrounding areas, the woods, the churches, everything for the most part like really struck a chord with like what I was hoping to see from when they initially revealed this game with a trailer. I think it totally succeeded in its attempt to capture those types of things, and it just gets really good, and it sets up an interesting idea for a sequel, something I didn't expect to even say or think of going into this game. I thought it'd be like, yeah, cool, it was Pinocchio Souls-like, it was spooky. But there's a lot more to it. It tries to tell a little bit of story. It tries to have some questions. It's got interesting character build stuff. It builds on the From Software stuff in, I think, meaningful ways. It's not just like a total straight clone with a new setting. This is another one I'm talking myself in circles with. I've talked about Lies of P a lot. Souls-like games are not for everybody. They're barely for me. But this one, I just really liked. Next up is one I've been dying to talk about. It's El Paso Elsewhere. If you like write down all the elements of this game on a list, it's me. It's everything I want from a game. It's a lot of games I love. It's a guy in a trench coat in third person running and diving and shooting in slow motion. It is totally a Max Payne inspired game. It's got some kind of lo-fi retro style graphics, like something like Dusk. It's got a really good moody noir atmosphere where the main character, with incredible voice acting, really chews the scenery, and there's some good writing and great one-liners.
It's only going to get worse from here. And why do I feel so fucking good?
There's also hip hop. There's like legit music in this game, and that makes me happy. It's also not only a third-person slow-mo Max Payne style shooter, but instead of shooting men, you're fighting spooky ghouls and werewolves and vampires. So it's like all these things I absolutely love, and it nails it. It's a very simple, very straightforward game. I think some people might play it and go, really, you think this is Game of the Year material? Like, you like this more than like Tears of the Kingdom? For me, this just really appeals to me. Everything about this game. I want to see a sequel. I want to see where things can go. I just thought it was a really great game. It's a smaller game from a smaller developer publisher, Strange Scaffold. They do a great job, and I think El Paso Elsewhere is their best work yet. Game of the Year lists like this are important to me because like I'm not just I like a lot of AAA games. I like these big games, okay? But there's a point where like sometimes it's just like a game can come out of nowhere and it just feels like it was made for you and really appeals to you, or scratches one specific itch, or does one thing that you love so much. El Paso Elsewhere just really, to me, like it felt like a Jake game, like a game made for me. And it's one of the few opportunities I've had in this job where I was able to actually speak to the main creator behind this game in person and just thank them for making such a cool thing. And that's important to me. That's special to me. And I really like this one. Next up is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now, I really liked Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It just felt like such a nice surprise, a breath of fresh air, a good step forward for Star Wars games, and Jedi Survivor capitalizes on that. I don't know which one I like more. I think I don't know. I'm torn, but I really like where Cal Kestis' journey goes in this one. I like how much more there is to do in this one because like I do just want to spend more time in these Star Wars worlds. I absolutely love Star Wars, not just the shitty ones, but the bad ones and the great ones too. Like this game makes me happy because like I don't talk about Star Wars movies or shows or anything online anymore. I took that level of my fandom and took it offline. It's too toxic. But the games have been making me really happy, and Jedi Survivor specifically, and I said this in my video kind of with how it does a lot of fun prequel stuff. It has you at certain points fighting B-1 battle droids and droidicas and stuff like that, and it's just cool. But it also feels like it's got like little throwbacks, little elements to like classic Star Wars games that I love. The fact that you can like get Dash Rendar's jacket as an unlockable, like that's huge to me. But in terms of like the fantasy, the wish fulfillment Star Wars stuff, being able to fight with a crossguard saber, you know, double bladed, they do a blaster saber hybrid. That stuff is cool. I've been wanting stuff like that in Star Wars games forever, and I got it. It does some interesting stuff with like the High Republic. It does some stuff that feels like a little callback to some old EU stuff. It's just a good time for Star Wars fans. I know Star Wars fans are like all over the place at this point. You can't please them all, but Jedi Survivor pleased this one. Oh, and next, RoboCop Rogue City. It's just good. It's like El Paso Elsewhere, or like where I'm like, yeah, I know like this is technically knocking other big games off the list, but like for me specifically, I just really love the shit out of it. It's got so many flaws. It's got so many problems. It's a little undercooked in spots, but I really just like being in the shoes of RoboCop. I loved exploring these beautiful environments, doing weird, corny police work, and like exploding dudes' heads with some fun, simple first-person, shooting. Peter Weller does an all right job. It's cool to have him there. RoboCop himself in the game looks incredible. And I just really liked living in that world. I put out a video not too long ago about this game specifically. I would love for you to watch it because I kind of go in depth of like why I love RoboCop, but also like how I've been playing RoboCop games since the NES, like original RoboCop game. And this kind of brought back feelings of that in a lot of weird ways. It's weird to like kind of get older and look back and acknowledge that stuff. So RoboCop Rogue City hit a lot of notes for me. The nostalgia, the fun, just the having a RoboCop game again. It's been a minute and a lot of them aren't great. And it just felt like the people who made it kind of understood RoboCop because that was the biggest risk. RoboCop isn't just cool robot shooting bad guys. There's some satire to it. There's some weird stuff to it. So I'm glad that RoboCop Rogue City mostly understood that. For me, it's one I'm going to be thinking about and looking back at for a long time. Like this is the RoboCop game as far as I'm concerned. So for me, that makes it Game of the Year material. But my number one pick for Game of the Year, again, like I said, the list wasn't really like in order or anything, but this is actually my number one. If you've been watching me on other things, you probably know at this point it's Alan Wake 2. I love Remedy games. I love Remedy since the original Max Payne. I very much also just come to video games for fun, single-player adventures with good stories. Since Resident Evil, since Metal Gear Solid, I was in it for playing a video game, yes, but I was there for the adventure, cool characters, badass shit, and Alan Wake 2 does all that. Not only does it do all that, but like it makes my job interesting as like a sitter and talker and thinker of games. Alan Wake 2 tries weird new shit. It tells the story in more unconventional ways. It uses different mediums to tell that story. It's more Remedy experimentation. It has two main characters, and with that you kind of get two different types of horror, two different types of vibes. Saga Anderson I thought was a little bit of a weaker character, but I liked her overall story, and then Alan's stuff just gets weird and trippy and crazy. So you get a lot of stuff in this game, like so many things that feel like a bunch of people had like a lot of great ideas and threw them all in. You get stuff that feels like Alan Wake 1. You get old Max Payne. You get like the aggressive, punchy shooting of Control or even Quantum Break, but you get survival horror elements. You get weird, trippy, noir, creepy stuff. You get kind of like a Silence of the Lambs, Silent Hill style vibe. This game has a lot of those things thrown in. But for me as an old school Remedy fan, it's just some of those callbacks, some of those not even callbacks and references like in your face Easter eggs, but just the feeling that the game evokes, some of the writing, some of the dialogue, some of the way things are presented, just transported me back to Max Payne 1 and hearing like the flesh of fallen angels and me being like, whoa, what the fuck is that? That's crazy. Alan Wake 2 is just like a bunch of that. The survival horror gameplay itself, like the shooting and the blasting is pretty good, but like otherwise it's really simple. It's a simple game gameplay wise, but I just liked playing through it. I wanted to see where it went. I was so hooked on it. It's absolutely gorgeous from a graphical standpoint, but also from like the character design, art direction, environments, music. Some of the sequences in this game are so memorable. Video game sequences that I'm going to remember forever. Like say the ashtray maze from Control. Stuff like that here. And that to me is the mark of a game that's going to stick with me for a while. And that's why Alan Wake 2 is my number one. I was really looking forward to this one, and I think they delivered on every front. Those are my favorite games. I got some honorable mentions, like a couple I want to just throw out. Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun. I just really liked it. I like that style of shooter. That they're called on Steam boomer shooters. Just a retro, fun Warhammer gory shooter. I used to love playing shooters like this. I don't know a lot about Warhammer, but I just had so much fun playing this. Also, Cyberpunk. Can I just put Cyberpunk on the list? Like I didn't want to put it in the main list because it's like you guys released a busted game, but this was the year where I fully went back hard into Cyberpunk. And not only is the game much better now, but the Phantom Liberty expansion in particular is just great. Like top to bottom, really good. Idris Elba kind of drops the ball in the voice acting department, in my opinion, but everything else is awesome. I'm glad to see that they finally got their shit together with this game completely, top to bottom, front to back, because from the beginning, I thought Night City was just a great video game place that I wanted to spend more time in. And 2023 was the year where I finally really did, and I enjoyed my stay. Also, Final Fantasy 16. It's a flawed Final Fantasy game. I don't even really love the combat like that much. I wish it was either more intense or it just remains some sort of turn-based thing. But still, Clive, the world they built, the music, some of the boss battles are incredibly memorable for me. This game has a lot of like weird pacing and some stuff I did not like in a lot of spots, but the highs are so high that it still kind of squeaks onto my runner-up list. I also just love a mainline Final Fantasy game playthrough. Like I am always a sucker for those. But yeah, this is my list for 2023 games. Thank you for your patience. It's a hard thing to make. I probably am going to look back at this 6 months from now and like disagree with it, but this is where we are, this snapshot in time. These are some of my favorite games from 2023. There are so many, and a lot that you might be surprised I didn't even put on this list. Because again, like if they're great. There are other games out there that are great, but I can only fit so many. So let me know what you think in the comments. I want to hear your list most importantly, instead of you yelling at me. Let me know what you're playing. Thank you guys for another year over here on my channel. Things are ramping up little by little, slowly every year. And it's been fun talking more. So I continue to do that. I'm going to continue to do that. Hopefully more, but thank you for listening, talking with me. If you like what I'm trying to do here, I'm just talking about stuff I love all the time. Clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. But I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.